Hello everybody and welcome back to the New Variety Art Show. We're glad you're with us on this edition of the New Variety Art Show, coming to you from Arizona, and I have my official Arizona pencil here. It was a gift. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Meanwhile, wake the neighbors, call the kids, and get them around the TV set because we have an exciting show for you this time on the New Variety Art Show. I'm Brad Zinn. I'll be your host as we meet our guest today. And you know, the New Variety Art Show features one-on-one interviews with magicians, clowns, mimes, jugglers, belly dancers, caricaturists, puppeteers, ventriloquists, singers, dancers, comedians, and many, many more. And we hope that by giving you this opportunity to meet these people one-on-one, you'll have a little better understanding of what they do. And the next time you see a variety arts performer live and in person, you'll appreciate what they do just that little bit more. And here's a guy we love to hear from around here. His name is Van Corriton, and he's our musical director.
Thank you, Brad. I'm glad you didn't call me a clown.
No, not at all. I wanted to. This is the pencil you gave me.
The great pencil.
Yes, I think that's just perfect there for our Arizona show.
Right.
Yeah, the Saguaro. That's very pointy. You know, you've been following the elections, I'm sure. The primaries now are really underway and all that kind of stuff. There's one candidate we don't hear a lot about.
Oh.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, they've just created a martini based on David Duke's chances of winning the presidency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's 8-1. It's a very dry martini.
Dry joke.
Yeah, and, well, we'll be the judge of that. I want to tell everybody that you're still over at the Phoenician during tea time.
Right, afternoon tea.
Where can they see you?
Where can they see me? We have a tea court in the main lobby, which is where the beautiful view is, and I'm at the 9-foot Steinway there every afternoon.
Very good. You know, we ask people to call in and let us know what they think about the show and tell us if they have any ideas for any guests for upcoming shows. We always love to hear from folks. If there's somebody out there that's a variety arts performer, give us a call. And if you have an event coming up, we'd like to start a variety arts calendar and help you to promote that event so that variety arts performers can be recognized in the community. The number there is the area code, as always, is. So please give us a call and stay in touch. We have a very exciting guest today, Van. He is a fiddle player. We had Steve Vaughn on, who is, I consider, more of a violin player. But Sol is a fiddle player. We're going to find out what the difference exactly is.
Super.
But we have some footage of Sol playing, and he was recently featured on a news story, and we have a little clip of that. And then after that, there's a clip of him playing for some school children, and this is something that he does a lot of here in the Valley. So don't go away. Don't touch that dial.
Good.
Watch your screen, and you'll see a little clip of Sol Rudnick. When we come back, we'll meet Fiddlin Sol Rudnick in person.
The country are here for this rodeo, and along with good riding and good roping, there's going to be some good fiddling by Arizona's best. They call him Fiddlin Sol, and it's easy to hear why he has been honored at the National Fiddlers Hall of Fame as a certified champion fiddler. Fiddlin Sol has also been dubbed Arizona's best, twice winning the state fiddling championship.
There's plenty of other good fiddlers and good musicians around the state. Everyone is good in his own way. I think it's hard to say that one is better than the other unless one is really amateur. So being good, I think, is there's a lot of respect, so a lot of ways to look at it.
His name is Sol Rudnick. He was 12 years old when he started formal training on the violin. It was by chance that he switched to country fiddling. The transformation began when he went to a barn dance in upstate New York.
It was sure a very authentic old-time, held in a barn with baled hay and so forth, an old-time fiddler that was as traditional as you could get. And the music itself in that form very much excited me. I knew right at that time that was going to be my kind of music.
For Sol, fiddling gives him the freedom to try something different.
That was terrific. A little taste of what our guest does. Fiddlin Sol Rudnick. I want to mention that he is a certified champion fiddler at the National Fiddlers Hall of Fame, and he is twice Arizona State champion fiddler, and he's here with us today, and we want you to welcome Fiddlin Sol Rudnick. Thanks for being here, Sol. We want to mention right off the top that that particular clip that we saw, the news story about the rodeo,
right.
Now that ran about, what, it was 2 years ago, is that right?
It was about 2 years ago,
Yeah.
yes. It was some preliminary promotion for the rodeo.
For the rodeo, but
yes.
we don't want to mislead people into thinking that that's the
No,
this year's
it's-
rodeo or whatever, so
Okay.
so that they don't try to run out and buy tickets for the wrong date or something like
Right.
that. Yeah, very good. Well, tell us about being the Arizona State Fiddle Champ. How did you achieve that, and how do you get into the National Fiddlers Hall of Fame? What's involved with that?
Well, winning a championship, which could either be a state or regional, is the primary way of doing it, and that's when you're recognized as a champion fiddler. I think there's some other respects too. I don't think you necessarily have to be a certified champion. I'm not sure of what other qualifications or how they select on that, but I know at the time that I won the championship, that's how I was given that
Inducted.
honor,
Yeah.
yes, to it. And I'm sure many other fiddlers that, for no fault of their own, didn't have a chance to win a championship are well-deserving and are also there with me in the Hall of Fame.
Do they give you an induction dinner? Do they feed you some rubber chicken and have a big ceremony?
No.
Or?
No, the only thing, I got a certificate stating that. This Hall of Fame, it's in Weiser, Idaho, where they hold the national contest.
Weiser, Idaho.
Right, that's north of Boise. by
Must
about
be just slightly larger than Buckeye, Arizona.
slightly larger. Entirely different atmosphere, too. Yes.
Have you been back there?
I've been back there a few times, yeah. Lately, I don't have a chance to go to too many fiddle contests, unless lately I'm called to judge on quite a few of them. But otherwise, I'm usually booked on weekends on special events. Yeah. And I might say that contests aren't really my favorite form of fiddle entertainment. I much more enjoy what you might call fiddle gatherings, festivals where you can share and learn from each other.
Oh, I see.
Contests, I believe, fiddlers get uptight. They don't really, it's a sort of an ego. And whether you win or lose, and I've said this, whether I've won or lost, that it's not necessarily a gauge of your ability. Or at least
just
not on
one
my
day out of your
part.
life.
Yeah, well, I judge my ability more by, the reason I love this music so much is because the audience gets involved in it. Makes people joyful, participation.
When were you Arizona State fiddle champ?
Well, it was, you know, I should have checked on
that's
it.
soon.
That goes back at least 10 years. I made it 2 years in a row back then.
It was back-to-back wins.
Yes, it was.
Very good. Well, now let's talk about your background a little bit. Where were you born?
In Brooklyn, New York.
In Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
And you play fiddle music. Now, I would think you'd have to come from Tennessee or Arkansas or the Smoky Mountains to develop.
Not necessarily. There's, well, I lived in New York up until about age 13 and then moved to upstate New York. And their traditional fiddle or traditional folk music and so forth is quite popular. They still have the old barn dances, in fact, more so than in Arizona. So, you know, regional doesn't necessarily indicate how popular. In fact, in New York City, back when I was working at Garrett, and
now, we're talking about Garrett's Air Research,
yes,
is that right?
Right.
Is that what brought you out here to the Valley?
No.
Well, I don't want to confuse the story. Let's talk about
Yes.
when you were playing at Garrett's. Where was this at now? Back in New York?
In New York, there was a fiddler that I wanted to hear, and so I purposely flew in over the weekend and got back in time for work the next Monday just to, it was a $500 trip just to hear a certain fiddler.
That's dedication.
Who, yeah, yes, and there was quite a big audience for her there. She drew quite a crowd from New York City, so it shows that even in the big cities, this type of music is
now,
so.
did Mom and Dad want you to be a concert violinist? I mean, was that part of your upbringing, was music lessons and that sort of thing?
My father was a concert violinist. He's gotten away from it now somewhat, but he used to play quite a bit. My mother, she wasn't really Actually, when I first started, it was going to be piano lessons, and what determined the violin at the time we called it a violin, by the way, was the fact that my mother couldn't afford to rent a piano, but she could a violin. And I said, well, why not? Which was a happy result of being poor, because I'm much happier with that. With a fiddle than I would have been playing
Well, and it's
piano.
easier to carry a violin
Yes.
around than it is a piano.
That's another
at least a
point.
Steinway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, when did you move here to the Valley? What brought you out to the Phoenix Desert?
It was about 24 years ago, and I think it was just for a change of environment. I had seen some Arizona Highways magazines, and
Aha, so it works, man. It works. We send those magazines out all over the country, and they really do come here.
Yes.
Well, you must have liked it, because you've stayed 24 years.
yes, I do like it in Phoenix, and no place is perfect, but Phoenix certainly has its good qualities, I'll have to say that.
Now, did you work other jobs besides playing violin as well?
Yeah, well, I worked for the Garrett Corporation for 18 years, and now, June will be my 6th anniversary of quitting Garrett, called Garrett at that time. They've changed their name to Signal. Garrett's Alloyed Signal now.
I see, Alloyed Signal, yeah.
But no, I quit my job because I felt I had to make a decision, either music or I couldn't really devote myself fully to both.
Yeah.
And especially I didn't feel I had enough time to really pursue music to see if I can make a career of it.
Right. I don't think people realize that that it really does envelop your life,
That's
whatever you
right.
decide to do, whether it's music or
That's right.
being an artist or being a magician or whatever it might be. It really, you must devote that kind of time and energy to it in order to really make something out of it.
Definitely, a lot more than even the skill of playing. You have to experiment on just how to go about it, how to administrate it.
Yeah.
In my case, I found that I have to do a number of various projects to make it work. I can't, if I played just traditional fiddle music, I would never be able to, but that's all right because I like many other forms of music.
Yes. Well, I think that's what distinguishes you, is your ability to move between various forms of music, and we're going to get into that when you actually start playing. You're also involved with the preservation of fiddle music and promoting fiddle music, and you do this in a lot of different ways, and I want to touch on some of those. We saw you performing for the young children there in the clip.
Right, yes.
You do school assemblies and seminars. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what types of activities you're involved with besides just performing?
Yeah. Well, I've been on the Arizona Commission on the Arts, on their Performing Artist roster, for 4 years now. And that's where I get most of my school residencies from, which primarily entails educational programs for elementary schools, although it can go into high school and college. And these are put on by various colleges who they're promoting their college, but at the same time they're promoting the arts. And they'll book you at several schools or at various other types of educational organizations around the county that
and this is to encourage young kids to take up music and
Yes.
to learn an instrument?
Primarily, or, well, not necessarily to learn, but to get acquainted with the arts, with the performing. They have any number of types of performing artists that come to the residence.
So it's a broadening of their horizons.
That's
then,
right,
basically.
yes.
In that clip we saw, I don't want to neglect to mention this, your accompanist. Let's mention her name. And
Yeah. Well, Sue Harris is the one that normally plays with me on guitar. And I might mention that that's generally all I care to have for an accompanist is just a guitarist. Preferably a guitarist, singer. It's mostly instrumental, but the singing, Sue sings a lot of fiddle songs in addition to children's songs, as I think we saw on the tape there.
Right.
And that complements the whole program. So it's either with a guitar accompanist like that or as a soloist.
Yeah.
I do prefer to play with a guitar accompanist, but when I'm playing at a function where I might stroll between tables, as I'm doing at Tony and Maria's restaurant.
And also for conventions, a lot of convention work here in town.
As long as it's somewhat in the order of background music, it works pretty well as a soloist.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a staged performance, I much prefer the guitar accompanist, or of course recording. Recording, I might use a few other instruments.
Right.
Possibly.
Now, let's talk about recordings, because you've had a number of tapes and recordings made and CDs and that sort of thing. How did this all come about?
Well, I've made two LP records and one cassette tape. I'm sold out of all of them, and it was somewhat profitable. I never made a fortune on it. What I'm doing now, I'm working on my 4th and 5th recording, which will be available on CD and cassette tape both, somewhere in early April. And I expect that to go much better. I'm going first class with recording studio, state-of-the-art quality, and printing means a lot. I think it should be in full color. This is something I didn't realize before, that
well, not only do you have to have a good product, but it has to be marketed.
It has to be marketed. It has to look good, at least for the people that don't know you and haven't heard you play.
And speaking of image, you because you do a lot of ethnic type music, you have developed a kind of a look about you. I mean, when they see that your logo, which is kind of you in shadow, they know it's Fiddlin Sol, because you don't look like a lot of other fiddle players. You look a little bit like Tevye, Fiddler on the Roof.
Yep, I've been told that many a times, and I've even portrayed that on rooftops. Yes.
Now, let's get into, because we want to leave you enough time to play, let's get into the difference between fiddle music and violin, because a lot of people, it's the same instrument, but there's a lot of differences. So I'm going to let you explain that, and maybe you can demonstrate on your instrument there.
Yeah, well, what I like to do on that, I am often asked that question, in fact, more so than all other questions put together. And so what I've worked out with that is a demonstration. Usually the audience will hear me play the fiddle for a while first, and I'll say, well, maybe I'll...
Now, you're going to stand up here to do this? Okay.
Yes.
We got about a minute to do this, okay? So go ahead and show us the difference between fiddle music and violin. Okay.
It's going to start off as a violin, but it may go astray and change to a fiddle along the way here, which will prove that really it's the same instrument, just how you play it.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
I might mention that.
Let me move this down for you just a little bit so that we don't bump.
One thing I don't think the camera caught there was my foot
keeping time
when I played it as a fiddle, and not so as you would never see a violinist do that in an orchestra.
Now, you've captured my attention with something that you have on your promotional material. It says Fiddle Magic, and this is something that you do in your assembly programs and seminars. And let's talk about Fiddle Magic for a minute.
Yeah, well, this is especially...
Do you pull silks out of your violin, or what?
Well, what I like to refer to myself as a cross between a musician and, as you, a magician, and musician, maybe you could say.
Musician. I've been called that a few times, too.
In that magic don't necessarily have to be something that is illusionary to your eye. It can also be illusionary to your ear. If this looks like a fiddle or violin, and if I can make it sound like something else, then that's... I call it fiddle magic.
Okay. Can you give us a little demonstration
Yes,
of what might be involved in that?
What I love to do for elementary students, and it's interesting when I do my animal imitations. I do several types, but the children seem to recognize them much faster than adults do. We've proven this, that 5 or 6 years olds can recognize these sounds before their teachers. And
okay.
So we'll see how many young at heart.
Okay. I'll listen real close. Do you want me to guess this? What do you think? Sylvester and Sylvester the
right.
cat? Okay.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'll ask the kids what type. Well, they'll say a kitty cat. It's called the Waltzing Cat, and this goes back to actually when I played in an orchestra back in high school. It's a classical piece called the Waltzing Cat. I'm not sure who it was written by, but I believe I can make it sound more like a cat as a soloist with my fiddle than they could with a full orchestra.
With a full orchestra, yeah. We want to be able to give you a chance to play your medley because you put some stuff together. You have a traditional and an ethnic medley. Which would you prefer to do? We may not have time for both, so which one would you like to do?
Okay, well, in case we don't have time for both, I'll just mention the ethnic. I play most of the major nationalities of music at Tony and Maria's restaurant, 16th Street south of Thomas. I got that in.
Okay.
Okay. Traditional fiddle is really my first love. Actually, if I had a choice, there's no question that old-time traditional fiddle music is the one I'll break into.
The ethnic would involve like the Irish music and the Italian.
Irish, in a way, Irish I sort of has another classification because I specialize in that too. I play for Irish step dancers, which I'll be doing a lot on St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
And ethnic, it's mostly Italian, of course, at the Italian restaurant. It could also be German, mariachi, Mexican music.
Oh, okay. So you have quite a range then.
Yeah, I do a lot of Israeli music, but it branches off into all the major Havanagila, and I'll go right to their Ranchagran.
All right.
But in any case, if we're running short of time, let's go.
Well, we'd love to hear. This is a traditional music medley by Fiddlin Sol Rudnick. Very nice, very nice. And I think we may have time for you to do the other medley. Now, can you do you want to use the other violin for that, or can you?
Well, the other violin, that's actually a viola, and that's part of my fiddle magic. We have time for that. I'll give a demonstration.
Okay, all right. Yeah, of course, we're taping this in March, which is the St. Patrick's Day holiday falls in March. I'm not sure when this will air, when you'll see it. But now this is very interesting, and
well, this, you might say, is a cross between a fiddle and bagpipes, or I like to joke this is a result of a frustrated attempt to play the bagpipe.
Ah, okay, all right.
Actually, a viola tuned a fifth lower than a fiddle.
That's terrific.
Yes,
That's
this goes good at fiddle contests in the division that they call Trick and Fancy, which gives you a chance to show.
I can imagine that it would.
Creative.
Well, I'd like to have you go ahead and do the ethnic medley that you had prepared for us, because it looks like we'll have time. And if I have to talk before we get to the end of the show, just keep playing, and we'll do that. All right, here's Sol Rudnick with an ethnic medley where you can see him at Tony and Maria's restaurant here in Phoenix. Okay. We want to thank Fiddlin Sol Rudnick for joining us here on the New Variety Arts Show. And we want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Van, for being here again this week. And we hope that you'll join us again next week when we'll have another fascinating guest from the world of variety arts entertainment. Remember, in the meantime, to support variety arts in your community. Thanks, Sol. Keep playing. Thank you, folks. Good night.